Good morning, all. I hope all of you all have had a good night's sleep and are refreshed for this day. We are still waiting for participants to join in. One more minute to settle down. I request all participants to please settle down. All right, dear friends, I hope everybody is settled down and comfortable. Hello and welcome to day 2 of Leap to Excellence in Athletic Performance 2021. This event is organized by Chandrasekhar Agashe College of Physical Education, Pune, in association with Physical Education Foundation of India, PEFI. Friends, our experts yesterday have been telling us about bringing out innate human abilities to aid sports performance or athletic performance. So when an athlete identifies their innate abilities, if they participate in sports highlighting those abilities, they will reach a higher potential for sure. So now we have gathered on this virtual platform to connect with more experts, or rather superstars, who have been doing this years and years, unlocking hidden human potential in regards to sports performance. Let us recap the proceedings of day 1. The first resource person yesterday was Dr. Nancy Clark from Boston. She talked to us about the power of nutrition, the power of food. She highlighted some of the common mistakes we make. She provided us with thoughtful solutions to it. In the end, she told us that she is envious about the Indian diet. That, my friends, is a very promising statement. So let us take advantage of that. Next up was Dr. Atul Gaikwad, telling us why connection is necessary before correction. He told us we may be the fastest man on earth, or we may be 5-time world champions, or we may have an unbeaten record. But above all, we are human beings. So keeping in mind all of this, we coaches or trainers or parents need to create a human bond with our players, athletes. This way, it promotes a build of trust that allows successful management of their behavior, which eventually translates on the field with them giving their best. So without any delay, let us head to today's program. To start off, let me tell you how, or let me tell you what you guys and we have been doing while training our athletes or players. Our athletes, or we try to give our athletes or help them attain peak levels of performance and stay at that performance by methods that we have learned. And we all know that the journey from fundamental to elite sports requires a constant capture of analysis, data, and its evaluation, especially on key areas such as physical or technical capacities of the players. This is the foundation for providing feedback on how a player or athlete performs. And this feedback leads to development of informed coaching interventions within daily training and preparation for match play. This approach may be critical in finding extra margin between success and failure, my friends. So, dear friends, today we have an expert from South Africa. He has qualified with a degree of sports science in biokinetics at the University of Durban, Westville, South Africa. He has served as the chairperson for Biokinetics Association of South Africa at the KZN region. He has over 15 years of experience in sports science and biokinetics. So, ladies and gentlemen, to understand the role and benefits of sports science and performance assessment, I am deeply delighted, honored to welcome Mr. Donovan Pillay. Over to you, Mr. Donovan Pillay.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I hope I'm coming through quite clearly. It's quite an early morning here in South Africa. It's now 6:30 a.m. Okay, I hope that's coming through quite clearly. So yes, so again, thank you for having me. My name is Donovan Pillay. I'm a sports scientist and biokineticist from South Africa. I was asked to present today on strength and conditioning, sports science, and biokinetics. And that's quite a wide scope to talk about. So I thought about taking everyone through a journey, and I've titled, which is quite a common title in quite a few presentations, especially with Olympics, from playground to podium. Given that, from what I've been told, the audience being majority physical educators, students, strength and conditioning coaches, physios, and coaches. So I'm going to highlight some of the sports science aspects, the medical aspects, and a bit of research that I've been going with regards to player pathways, long-term athletic development, etc. So just a little disclaimer, I don't have any actual potential conflict of interest in relation to these presentations, and I do not have any rights to the pictures that were used. So I come from the beautiful city of Durban, which is called South Africa's playground. It's on the east coast of South Africa, and I stand to be corrected. It said it probably has the highest percentage of Indians outside of India based in Durban. So I've been very fortunate to have worked both in clinical practice at my practice, Donovan Pillay Biokineticist, where we have a few clinics, and our other company called ExoSmart, which is more wellness and sports science company. but also privileged to have worked with various sporting teams. These are just some of them that I've worked with in the Dolphins, which is the KZN regional team here in South Africa, the Sharks, which is a rugby team in KZN Durban. And fortunate enough to have spent about 5 years in India as the head of sports science and medicine for JSW Sport. And under that banner, we've obviously had Bengaluru FC. Being involved in the design and obviously the building and equipping of the Inspire Institute of Sport, and also the development of and management of the medical aspects with regards to Haryana Steelers. And quite proud to say that the Inspire Institute of Sport is now one of the leading sports institutes in India, if not the world, and hopefully it will produce future Indian Olympians. So some of you might be wondering what is what is biokinetics and what is a biokineticist. Biokinetics is very much a South African profession, overseas commonly known as clinical exercise physiologist. However, in South Africa, we do a lot of orthopedic and physical therapy scope of practice as well. So biokinetics, bio plus kinetics, life plus movement, or life through movement. And our role is basically to improve the physical well-being and quality of life through scientific assessments, prescription of exercise, and rehabilitative to prevent and intervene with certain ailments and enhancement of performance. We are registered with the Health Professional Council of South Africa, so we work with the medical insurers. So we see individuals ranging from the weekend warrior post-operatively or with any orthopedic injuries to cardiac chronic disease, and also sports and professional athletes. It just depends what scope of work that you have in your clinic or practice. So I think it's important when chatting about strength and conditioning, sports science, exercise medicine, coaching, working with young kids, adolescents, and elite athletes to understand physical literacy. And physical literacy is the ability to move with competence and confidence in a wide variety of physical activities in multiple environments that benefit the healthy development of the whole person. Because if you can't move correctly, then that is going to lead to a decreased performance. For example, as a javelin thrower, with regards to gaining enough distance, it can lead to potential injuries and so on and so forth. And physical educators, coaches, and so on play a fundamental role in the development of a person. And I'm using the word person and not athlete, because physical educators, coaches lay the building blocks in order for them to achieve whatever they want to achieve. Not all children would get to an elite level. We know that for a fact. There's a small percentage that will get to either Olympic or a national level. But what we want to do is make sure that we're building humans or people that are moving correctly, that are healthy and well. And this is where I want to emphasize the importance of the physical educators. Yes, today we're going to be talking a lot on sport and athletes and the development of kids through the pathway. But I think, and given the pandemic that we currently lie in, we all in the exercise science, exercise medicine, sports science field play an important part in educating and creating awareness on health and wellness and the importance of physical activity and moving correctly with regards to preventing, hopefully, chronic disease, etc. And we all know the benefits of exercise with regards to immediate impact with regards to releasing endorphins. The brain works better. We are happier. Hopefully, have higher grades. We have stronger school connections, better retention at school, higher graduation rates. We sleep better. We are less depressed. There's better behavior. Um, you know, research has shown that there's less crime. The people that are healthy and active. There's more productivity at the workplace. In my practice alone, I do a lot of corporate wellness, and we've seen that, and the stats are there to prove it with regards to productivity, absenteeism, and a greater earning power. And obviously, from an integrational impact, with active parents raise active children, which means there's lower healthcare costs. So I want to emphasize that not only are we there to hopefully present, have an Olympian at the end of the day, but it's to also improve the health and wellness of every individual. And incorporating a lot of these specifics. Most importantly, it has to be fun, especially if you're working with kids. There needs to be a sense of belonging for the child. And fundamental movement skills is vital, which we'll chat about a little bit later. And it's about developing the whole person and not just one aspect of the individual. So I'm assuming we've all seen this with regards to physical and literacy as physical educators or students. So, the pathway from when we are born with regards to involvement in family and community, early childhood education, health promotion, sport, recreation, and physical education. So it's important that our programs have to be individualized. Very, very important is basic movement physical literacy, building on basic movement vocabulary, confidence, competence, and it must include a wide variety of activities, not specific just to one sport. We'll chat about early specialization later, and as mentioned, focusing on the whole person. So, as part of the head of sports science and medicine at JSW Sport, one of my roles was obviously to create pathways. JSW Sport was developed in 2012 with looking at building or getting more Olympians or Olympic medals for India. And this is the Canadian model, but every country will have one, which is player pathways, where you're looking at kids at an early age, taking them through the different aspects of active start fundamentals, learn to train, train to train, train to compete, train to win, and obviously general, leading an active life. Some of you might fit in at the different segments, so it's important to note what's below you coming into your academy or clinic or school, and then when that kid or athlete leaves, where is he going to have you prepared him well enough to move to the next level. Okay, and here you can see the different aspects that encompasses the long-term athletic development pathways, where an active start, we're looking to develop more basic movement skills, integrating mental, cognitive, and emotional development, some organized physical activity, active movement environment combining with well-structured gymnastics and swimming programs. And then as you move through train to win, we're looking at maintenance and improving of this physical capacities, development of technical and tactical skills. Here you're incorporating your and maximizing your mental preparation, etc. Okay, so just a better understanding of the long-term athletic development and pathways. Obviously, we're starting at an early age, which is your PKK, where we have unstructured, where kids are free to play. It must be open-ended. It must be participant-led, creative, improvised, no set goals with endless possibilities. And importantly, it must be fun. Then we're moving on to something more semi-structured, where participants play, but with guidance or just a few suggestions. And then obviously to the more structured, goal, task-orientated, closed-ended, where there's rules often led by the physical educator or the instructor. Okay, as mentioned, one of the most important aspects of physical literacy or the long-term athletic development model is fundamental movement skills, where we're looking at walking, jogging, running, crawling, skipping, galloping, roll, leap, bound, dodge, jump, land, hop, balance, hang, brace. And these can be incorporated to many fun games, with obviously having some kind of goal that the physical educator would want out of it. But with regards to what the kids or students are experiencing, they know that they're just playing a game, but you as a physical educator or coach have some kind of outcome measures for that session. It's important that kids need to know the primal movement patterns, and it's something that I see in my clinic a lot, where if you can't squat, lunge, hinge, pull, push, that is going to lead to restrictions, which is going to lead to potential injuries, which will also then affect performance. So again, as physical educators and coaches and physios and strength and conditioning coaches, if we develop strong, good foundational movement skills at an early age, that will lead to better performance later on, and it becomes easier for the kid to progress through the pathways where he doesn't have to change a lot of his natural movement later on. And then obviously talking about fitness days or sports days, there has to be a health-related fitness component, which we're looking at things to prevent disease, as I mentioned before, and the efficiency of the body system. So we're looking at strength, endurance, cardiorespiratory, flexibility, and body composition. And the skill-related fitness, we're looking at more your agility, balance, coordination, power, reaction time, and speed. I'll get to more of these a bit later on. This is a study done by John Olivier et al. It's the youth physical development model, which they've termed it a new approach to long-term athletic development from Cardiff. And I think it's quite a nice graph or schematic that they've put on here, which makes us understand the long-term athletic development or pathway of a child right up to adulthood. And what you can see are the different levels. So you're looking at your age, your growth rate, your maturational status, your physical qualities, and whether it's structured or unstructured. And this is obviously the male aspect. And what you would see is that functional movement, movement skills is very much what is focused on at early childhood and middle childhood, and then as the athlete or the child goes or increases in chronological age, then we start focusing on your sports specific skills, your agility, speed, power, strength, and eventually in your pre-adulthood, where we're looking at your hypertrophy and things like that. This will be your female, and here obviously it's important to look at the difference between the male and the female with regards to maturation status. And again, I will chat about this later on. So this is what a basic pathway would look like. So a performance pathway builds on sustains highly effective systems for talented athletes to ensure success at future Olympic and Paralympic Games. It could be Olympians, it could be a team environment, it could be cricket, basketball, rugby, whatever. You're obviously starting at the bottom. So as mentioned, community sports, schools, universities, clubs. That athlete then moves on to the county programs or your respective clubs, your regional programs, your age groups, your foundations like your JSWs and so on, and then hopefully to the podium. Where some athletes, a lot of them are late developers and might skip a lot of these aspects at the bottom and fill in here. And again, as physical educators and sports scientists, it's important to note where would you fit in into this pathway, and how would your training, coaching, or program prescription vary from the ones that are working at the bottom at schools and universities and clubs to that of working with a potential or an Olympic athlete. And again, the pathway where we've got the foundation, development, intermediate, advanced, elite, and then your high performance athletes. What I've noticed with my brief time at working in India is that everybody want to work at the high performance level. Everyone wants to work with BCCI or the Indian cricket team or the Olympian or JSW or whoever. But to me, the foundation aspect is very important, and that's where you kind of lay the blueprint for that individual. And if we only focusing on the top, then by the time that athlete or when it comes to the high performance level, he doesn't have the correct fundamental movement skills. He doesn't have the strength levels for his age group and so on and so forth. So you end up spending time working on that when you could be working on other aspects. So it's important that we work through that pathways where we're building a strong foundation and then getting more specific as we move along that pathway. This is the England Cricket Board's long-term athletic development model. And here you can see they've got, as I mentioned, the different stages previously, your fundamentals, learn to train, right up to retirement, where they've got, for each age group, they know what are their key points, and the coaches, sports scientists, physios that are working know what they need to work on. So if you look at your 6 to 9 boys and girls, it has to be fun. There has to be an overall athletic development, including a wide range of movement activities, as I mentioned, development of agility, balance, coordination, and speed, introduction of basic skills of throwing, catching, and striding, an introduction to modified and simple games, but not formal matches. And that, obviously that will then progress as you get to, let's say, training to compete, where here you're looking at more individualized, structured, physical, technical, tactical, and mental skills, cricket-specific technical skills, your mental skills being introduced there, and so on, and so forth. So this is specifically for cricket. Yes, some aspects might vary from sport to sport, but the basic fundamentals of the different stages will stay the same. There's lots of research being done on early specialization, and it's important, and especially when we were doing talent identification for the Inspire Institute of Sport, we found, especially amongst your boxers, wrestlers, and judos, where kids as early as 8, 9 years old really work training on one sport, so they lose the other aspects of the fundamental movements, on certain aspects with regards to agility and so on and so forth. So it's important to, while the athlete is training for a specific sport, or the child is training for a specific sport, that they also engage with other sports to develop an all-round movement skills and physical ability. So here again is the cricket pathway, just a different look of how they move through the age groups and the different pathways that they would progress through, right up to representing England at men, women, and disability. Okay, so the long-term athletic development model, we should look to accommodate for the highly individualized and non-linear nature of growth and development of the youth. Yes, I just said, we're going to have kids that are going to be, we need to actually get them involved in all aspects of sports, but you are going to get the unique ones where they would have, depending on the sport, where we have to have to have a little bit more of the individualization. And also, you could remember, you're also going to get your late bloomers. We need to provide all youth with a range of training modes to enhance both health-related and skill-related components of fitness. Obviously, qualified professionals with fundamental aspects of program success. So this is where you guys would fit in, ensure the health and well-being of the child above all else, as mentioned in my first slide that I put up. The practitioners should use relevant monitoring and assessment tools as part of long-term physical development and strategy. I'll chat about this later. We should have systematic progress and individualized training programs for successful long-term athletic development. And we should have enhanced physical fitness from early childhood with a primary focus on motor skill and muscle strength development, participate in physical conditioning that helps reduce the risk of injuries, and then lastly, engage in long-term athletic development programs like the one I've shown previously that promote both physical fitness, psychosocial well-being, regardless of age, ability, and aspiration. And hopefully we can have everyone being prescribed physical education where they take, the so-called pill or tablet, one per day, 5 times a week. So before we work with athletes, kids, depending on what, irrespective of what level of that pathway they will enter, it's important to consider a few things. It's important to consider certain medical aspects, so the physios and the sports physicians and doctors out there, especially when you're working with youths, to consider things like asthma, type 1 diabetes, any cardiac issues, and so on. So a part of your screening or pre-screening process is to make sure that you have this checked out, or you have asked the athlete or the child to go and have this kind of screening if you don't have the professionals at hand. It's important to also consider, before you do any assessment and program prescription, different body types. There's no one size fits all. And my biggest challenge in India while working there, remember we work with athletes from both south, north, and east, both from footballers and the Olympic coach. The different body types, whether you come from the north or the south or the east, it's important to take that into consideration, and how your program prescription would vary accordingly. And what I'm going to go through now in the next few slides is that small margins, or what I would term in, I've done presentations before, on the 0.5% that you're going to look at, that's going to make a difference in performance. Very important when working with kids, adolescents, children, is to look at the growth, maturation rates and injury prevention. So I know in football, when we're working, and I know especially in India and a lot of the Asian countries, we have a lot of issues with the correct age at entry at different age groups. So we would use obviously MRIs to check that out. But from a growth and maturation, we also need to look at the type of growth plate injuries that kids would experience. So we're looking at here your Osgood-Schlatter's, your apophysitis, your Cindy-Larson's, Sever's disease. Very common for females. We're looking at your adolescent scoliosis and things like that. So for the physios out there, just something to consider as part of your assessment or pre-screening before participation. Gender differences, very, very important. We've had some of our world champions and Indian Olympic wrestlers battle with a lot of these until we've kind of pinpointed as an area that we could improve on, was the female athletic triad. So things to consider, and especially in India, with the vitamin D deficiencies amongst the females. Also looking at things like your osteoporosis, so low bone mineral density, eating habits, disorders in eatings, and obviously your menstrual disturbance issues. With regards to differences from a skeletal or musculoskeletal perspective, here on the right, you can see obviously your femoral notch. So things like prevention programs for your ACLs and things like that. It's important to keep that into consideration. And then exercise physiology. So it's important to know the different energy systems. Keep that in mind. Your rest periods, how you're going to prescribe your program. There's been just a kind of coaching or program prescription where more is better. So there's very limited rest periods, not taking into consideration as to what energy requirements is specific for that sport. So it's important to look at, is it immediate ATP, CP? Is it short term? Are we looking at anaerobic? Are we looking at your aerobic energy systems? And your program prescription, your recovery, your rest between sets, etc., must be specific to that specific sport as you go later on in the pathways, but it's a vital component when looking at program prescription. Nutrition and recovery. I believe you guys had a lovely talk yesterday on nutrition, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And I agree. I'm very envious of the Indian diet. Love the food, and just something to mention, that when we designed the Inspire Institute of Sport, we did not bring a Western diet into the facility. We kept the Indian diet, and we just modified that to the energy requirements that the athlete needed. So we had our ghee is good. We had the wrestlers wanted the milk. We had our rotis and so on and so forth. But it was designed for the requirements, the energy demands for the sport, and the recovery. Things that we obviously introduced over and above, including nutrition, was chocolate milk. There's lots of good research on just basic chocolate milk using as a recovery. You don't have to spend money on expensive supplementation. We introduced beetroot shots 3 times a week. There's good research to look on at increasing or assisting in your blood levels. We looked at, we have introduced ice baths, hot and cold therapies. And at Bengaluru Football Club, every Monday, we used to measure the athlete's urine, where we would look at hydration levels, and that would give us an idea on whether the athlete needs to hydrate more, whether he needed to do only specific parts of the training and not the full squad training, and it helps us just to reduce the amount of injuries. Obviously, we looked at things like foam rolling and sleep, which is vital. I know, especially in India, with the professional athletes traveling long distances, traveling to different and foreign countries, sleep and recovery is vital with regards to improving performance. So these are some of the things that, as physical educators, physios, strength and conditioning, sports scientists, coaches, um, that we need to keep in mind as the 0.5% that can make a difference at the very end of that pathway. Again, here we got some injury prevention aspects, a study done in 2017, where we need to become involved in a regular pre-season and in-season conditioning and fitness program that also focuses on injury prevention. I know a lot of our wrestlers and boxers used to go into camp, and it was just like in-season throughout, never had an off-season to recover and to work on their strength and conditioning. It was just practice, practice, practice. So it's something to have your periodization plan. Have at least 1 day off per week for practices, sport-specific training and conditioning. Compete in only one sport during the season at a time, and avoid competing in multiple teams in different sports. And this is obviously at a later level in that pathway. You're taking at least 3 months off, but it's not necessarily in a row for competing in sports throughout the year. Sometimes it's a bit difficult depending on schedules, but it's important to consider time off. Take at least 1 month off from competing in a sport after season ends. And remember, this is just some research done on the general youth and adolescents. You'll obviously need to take into consideration your training calendar, periodization program, and competition schedule. Do not specialize in a single sport until middle or late adolescence, as we've seen in the model. And obviously, there's a few others. So now that we've done our pre-screening, we've considered some of the medical aspects, some of the gender differences, things like that. It's important that we need to assess, because in order to prescribe a program and have some kind of periodization, we need to know what are some of the baselines. We also need to have normative data in which to compare that with. And with my time in India, a lot of our data came from Western hemispheres and European countries. So for the academics out there, it would be nice, to create some kind of normative data. And we do have the numbers in India that are more specific for the demographics and body structure of an Indian or an Asian athlete. So it's important that whether you're working at a junior level or working with an Olympic athlete, you want to measure all aspects of fitness. I'll just take aerobic, for example. There's various ways in which we can measure it. Physical educators, because of the facility that you have, you would probably do, what I learned 20 years ago as well, was a 12-minute Cooper test. You can do a physical work capacity. You can do a 3-minute step test of the YMCA protocol, run up to a gas analyzer, a VO2 max, which is a nice to have at the top level. Going through strength, where here you can see you can use strength and endurance. So you're looking at push-ups. If you're looking at 6 RMs, 1 RMs, speed from just a basic stopwatch to using the electronic equipment, and so on and so forth. So it's important that we need to test and have baselines and have various testing protocols and normative data specific to the athlete that we're working with in the pathway and what's available to us. But most important is it has to be reliable, it has to be valid, and you must be able to repeat it. And once we've analyzed that and assessed the total fitness, then from there we can then put our prescription together with regards to strength and conditioning. So we do know that there's now compelling evidence to support regular participation of youth in resistance training to enforce health and fitness and their adaptation to sports performance enhancement. It is safe and it has to be prescribed and supervised by the appropriate instructor. Okay, this is a consensus statement by the NSCA. As I said, provide qualified instruction and supervision, ensure the exercise environment is safe and free of hazard, starting each training session with a 5 to 10 minute dynamic warm-up. Begin with relatively light loads and always focus on correct exercise technique. This is vital to prevent injuries. Remember, it's not about how much of a weight the athlete or the adolescent is pushing. It's about fit principle conditions on a variety of upper and lower body exercises, and that will vary as you move along the pathway. So fit principle, depending on the periodization, whether you're working on endurance, strength, and power. And also remember what I mentioned previously, taking into consideration your exercise physiology, your energy systems that you're looking at as to whether you're resting 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 90 seconds and above, depending on the energy requirements. And also looking at the type of muscle fibers that you want to use for that specific sport. Is it type 1, type 2 fibers that you want to work with? Okay, sensible progress to training program depending on needs and goals and abilities. We need to listen to the individual needs and concern throughout each session. We also need to keep the program fresh and challenging by varying the training program, optimizing performance and recovery with regards to health and nutrition and hydration, which I've mentioned before. It's also important that the physical educators or the sports scientist, strength and conditioning coach sit and engage with the coach as if you're working with the athlete much later on in the pathway, because we need to take into consideration what the coach might be prescribing on a day for these technical sections, to take into account training loads, etc., which I'll chat about again later on. So when we're putting together our program, it's important to consider the training age. So training age will be has the athlete or the child done any resistance training before, and how would your program vary depending on that. We mentioned motor skill competency that will come from your assessment, your technical proficiency and your strength levels. So looking at exercise selection, volume, intensity, as I mentioned, your fit principle, which is important, and then obviously safety and enjoyment. And the reason why we need to look at periodization as well is that what we often found, especially with our wrestlers, is that there would be no structure to their strength program. They'll probably do the same program for the entire year. So if they are traveling to overseas, they would do the same high load a few days before they travel. Then they would travel. Then the day before they weigh in, they would dehydrate themselves because they felt they couldn't make their weight categories, and that will affect their performance. So it's important to have some kind of periodization and looking at your rest periods, recovery, taking into consideration travel, sleep, nutrition, all the other aspects that I mentioned before. I didn't want to go too much into detail on how to put a program together and things like that because the framework will still stay the same. Obviously, what will differ is the type of athlete and where along the pathway you would working with the athlete. But I wanted to mention these things to consider that will help you in looking at those the small things that we tend to miss when putting a program prescription together. Okay, yeah, we mentioned, as I said, we need to look at the biomechanical and physical demands. This was a recent paper by Reed et al. In 2020, looking at to monitor rapid growth. So your maturation levels, as I mentioned, optimize adult performance, effective training modes, risk stratification, and so on and so forth. Again, another study done in the British Journal of Sports Medicine in June 2015, enhancing the fact that resistance training is important for adolescents and the various things that we would need to. So what I'm going to do now is take you through, this is a football kind of pathway that was done good by Chris Hattersley, just to show you how we put all of this in together and how it will vary from the different age groups. So we're looking here at Ajax, at their athletic skills center, and very much fun, enjoyment, games, fundamental movement skills, considering that adaptions are neuromuscular due to the neuroplasticity during these ages. So keep it into consideration that where we're looking at your intramuscular muscular coordination, intermuscular muscular, and the players need to learn to calculate and coordinate as many movements as possible. So for the physios out there, important to consider the neuroplasticity at these age groups. Again, fun movement activities, sports program, climbing, volleyball, gymnastics. They are doing this roughly about 3 times 10 minutes twice per week. Then we move on to under 12s and under 14s, where we're looking at the onset of puberty, peak height, velocity, and we're looking at an increase in circulating anabolic hormones, and hypothalamus and pituitary gland. We're looking at your musculoskeletal growth levels. Remember to consider the gender differences here as well. Muscle fiber differentiation, neurodevelopment continues at this age group. It's also important to note what we call adolescent awkwardness, where their limb increase in size and mass. You're looking at your levers that are creating more force, rapid growth of tissues, alters brain proprioception, mapping of the body, which impairs coordination. So here you would look at how their growth and maturation will affect your biomechanics, which in whatever sport you would be engaged in. And then as you move into your under 15 and 16, so post your peak height of velocity, you are looking at, you can see from the strength and conditioning where it moves from twice a week from your under 15 to 16s to 3 times a week. Also take into account your periodization on where you are, whether you're in season, off season, pre-season, which is important. Physical monitoring. So at a very high level or the elite level, we would look at, and at the Bengaluru FC, we used lucky enough to have GPS units. So we would look at distance, running speeds during training, metrics, acceleration, deceleration. We would look at your internal load, your chronic to acute workload. And what this would give us is, do we need to top up for those that maybe didn't play in that match? Do we need an extra day of recovery? Does the player need to work on specific aspects with regards to acceleration or deceleration and things like that? So it was just a basic monitoring tool that was an aid that we would give feedback to the coaches with regards to their physical abilities, and more importantly, things like recovery. So we would use things like a recovery questionnaire, which you can use as modeling at the higher end of that pathway, where every morning when the player comes in, they will answer a few questions to see how do they sleep, any injuries, any pains and niggles, and that will assist us in our program prescription and whether they will be able to carry out whatever was planned by the coach and also by the strength and conditioning coach at that day. At a younger level, that could be just talking to your to the child or the adolescent. How are you feeling? How did you sleep? It's important to also consider any issues that the child might be experiencing at home, any family problems, and things like that, because these are things that will affect physical performance, that can lead to a decreased performance, but also to certain injuries. So yes, the GPS and tools and things like that are quite nice to have, but the various other ways in which we can monitor, just using basic Excel, visual monitoring, as a physical educator to see how is the kid happy? Does he have the same energy levels as the day before? Is he favoring one side? Is he limping? And so on and so forth. So before I conclude, it's also important throughout, and we also found it with some of our early adult athletes, where there's lots of pressure, from parents. You're getting, I know in South Africa we have it a lot as well, where the parents are screaming from the child, the sidelines. So it's important to know how to manage that, because we don't know what pressure the kid is being put on, or what support or lack of support at home that's going to affect whatever you prescribed, or for that session. So it's important to consider the parental role with regards to your athlete. And as much as possible, as I said, at a younger age, play, because play is important. It's important to develop good fundamental movement skills. And if there's one thing you guys can take out of this talk, is focus on fundamentals of movement skills at an early age, and make sure we keep that focus throughout that pathways, where we need to be able to squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, jump, sprint, and change direction. So again, it doesn't matter what age group or what level that the athlete would participate in sport. It's important to consider the small little things that can make a difference in your program prescription. Also applying the science behind it, looking at the medical aspects, the exercise physiology, nutrition, recovery, very specific with your assessment, your program prescription, fit principle, and so on and so forth. So I hope that was insightful with regards to taking you through playground to podium on some of the long-term athletic development of um, um, the player pathway. The more specifics obviously will be different as you fit into the different pathways. So thank you very much for your attention.
All right, dear participants, the session is open for Q&A. Mr. Donovan Pillay, we would like you to answer a few questions, if that is
Yeah,
okay.
great.
Dear participants, please type your questions in the Q&A option below.
So maybe if I can start with some of the questions that are already there while the participants type in, if I may go ahead.
Yes.
There's a question on baby league in India of football is under 9, so we have to train them in specific sports. So how do we tackle the idea that the player during that early age should not specialize in a particular sport? So what I've mentioned is that the kid should be encouraged to play all sports. If you're working with football, you're obviously working on some kind of technical aspects. But part of your coaching plan should include um, fun games that incorporates throwing, upper body work, rotation, things like that. That will also develop not just lower body or foot movement or football specific movements. And remember, at under nines, yes, you as the football coach is focused on football, but that kid at school, as part of their physical education, should be encouraged to participate in other sports as well. But as a football coach, in order to develop the other aspects of fundamental movement skills, you can incorporate upper body work or play as part of your program prescription over and above some of the technical skills program that you would be doing. Um, what age should children be given weight training? This can start at an early age. We can start with things like body weight. So body weight is weight training, not necessarily needing to use dumbbells or resistance work. Um, so you can start with as early as possible, maybe using body weight. Things like a simple play exercise like tug of war that you would see kids using in school is a form of strength work, incorporating bands and so on and so forth. So at what age? As early as possible. Yes, I would share the presentation with the conference organizers if um, yes, we do use it. It also depends on with regards to artificial intelligence. It depends on your team's budgets, but it's a nice tool to have. And obviously, with the way technology is moving, it's definitely going to add to that 0.5 percent to your performance. So it's not a necessity, but it's a nicety to have if you've got artificial intelligence to assist in your assessment of your athlete. Um, in a physical education, younger athlete development model, it's not used so much, mainly used more from at the Olympic level and more at universities or your sports science labs.
Dear friends, would you like to ask more questions? All right. Mr. Pillai, I
Yes.
think those were the questions for today.
Yes, so once again, I would like to thank the organizers for having me and for everyone that attended. Wish you well in the remainder of the conference and looking to see future Olympians being produced um, by physical educators that will be laying that for strong foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Donovan Pillai. Thank you for guiding us on how to make assessment of athletes through development stages. It has been wonderful having you with us. We have gained a lot. And speaking for all, if not for all, but once this information has sunk in, I definitely feel most of us have found a missing piece to a puzzle. So thank you for being with us, Mr. Donovan Pillai. Good luck to you in future.
Thank you.
All right, friends, we finished with the first part of the event today.
Hello, ते join झालेत. Yes.
For the next session, there will be a discussion on role of allied sports in athletic performance. I request Mrs. Shraddha Naik to take over. Welcoming Mrs. Shraddha Naik.
A very good morning to one and all here, all the participants and the panelists for today. I take pleasure in welcoming you all on behalf of Agashe College of Physical Education. As always, Agashe College strives to bring to the core the latest that happens in the field of sports and physical education. So, in today's international conference, we have four eminent experts from different fields, which are allied fields and which relate to elite sports performance. They say that elite is somebody who has different superior qualities or superior characteristics than the rest of the team or than the rest of the others. And hence, we would like to know that how do these allied sciences and allied areas cater to these elite performance, or how do they impact the elite performance? We have four panelists with us. We have Dr. Tanmay, Dr. Ajit Mapari, Dr. Janaki Devle, and Mr. Sunandan Lele. These experts are from different fields, and I request Rohit once again to introduce the panelists briefly before we start the discussion. Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll head and we'll know more about our panelists who are with us for this discussion. First up, we have a sports physiotherapist from Pune. She has completed a degree from Lokmanya Tilak Medical College, Mumbai, and a master's degree in sports physiotherapy from the University of Otago, New Zealand. She has experience working for the sports medicine team at Kokelaben Dhirubhai Ambani Hospital, Mumbai, and has worked with cricketers and squash athletes, working with them in helping them recuperate from their injury. She is a well-trained orthopedic manual therapy, kinesio, and dynamic taping and dry needling expert. Right now, she's currently setting up her own clinical practice in Mumbai. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Tanmay Joshi. We move on to the next person. His experience spans for more than 15 years in sports and exercise medicine. He has completed his master's in sports and exercise medicine from one of UK's top universities, Exeter, Devon. He was the team doctor for Pune City Football Club, representing the Indian Super League, the medical team head for India tennis team at the Davis Cup, and also was doctor with many pro league teams. Please welcome Dr. Ajit Mapri. Next up, we have a very young and dynamic person with us, who's also a sports performance psychologist and expert, a pioneer in the field of applied sports psychology in India. She is the co-founder and director at Samiksha Sports Private Limited, which is India's first and only professionally run sport and performance psychology organization. She has also developed a program called Life Sport, for children, which aims at building life skills through physical activity and sport. Please welcome Dr. Janki Devle. The next person up, who does not require a formal introduction. If you ask anybody, he will tell you this man is a cricketer first and then a journalist, a consulting sports editor of IBN Lokmat and sports consultant for Sakal Group. He has written many articles on sports for leaders in media across the globe, has been a freelancer for BBC Radio and ABC Radio Australia for over 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Sunandan Lele.
Thank you, Rohit, for introducing the panelists of today's session. Now, may I request all the panelists, the session is going to be like this. The speakers are going to speak briefly about how the allied areas are related to high sports performance. And then the session will be open more for discussion. So like in the earlier sessions, we had to listen more. Today, we need to interact. In this session, we are going to interact more with these experts, because we believe that through discussions, we can get answers to a lot of questions. And hence, I request Dr. Tanmay Joshi to please throw light on how her area of expertise impact elite sports performance.
A very good morning to all of you. And thank you, Shraddha ma'am, for a wonderful introduction here. So as we are kickstarting this discussion today, which is the role of allied health in elite performance. Can you guys see my screen? I hope so, yeah. So I'm a sports physiotherapist, and I'll be throwing in some light on the role of sports physiotherapy in elite performance. So the International Federation of Sports Physical Therapy, the IFSPT, puts out a rather long definition of sports physiotherapy. So this definition basically addresses the who, how, why, and what of sports physiotherapy. So if you can just briefly read it. So a sports physio is a recognized professional who demonstrates advanced competencies or skills doing what? So for the promotion of safe physical activity participation, provision of advice, and adaptation of rehab and training interventions. And this would be for what? So this would be for the purpose of preventing injury, restoring optimal functions in athletes, and for contributing to sports performance enhancements in athletes of all ages and abilities. Now, let's try and just divide this into stages of what an athlete goes through during his match to put across a more detailed role of us sports physios. So first and foremost, let's see what happens during the pre-competition stage. So, you know, when the season starts and athletes are at camp, training for their sport and getting ready for their matches or the tournaments. So I would like to stress upon injury prevention strategies that we work with. As Mr. Donovan Pillai had very rightly mentioned, basically reducing the risk of sports injury is such an important factor, which should go hand in hand with the technical training that the athlete goes through. So the risk of sustaining a sport injury is an inherent part of elite sports. And there is a lot of research that, you know, proves this, because athletes are always trying to push their limits, perform better, get better at every match they play, but they may not always understand if their body is trained enough physically or fit physically to be able to achieve that level of performance. So us as sports physios, we try to devise preventive strategies or activities and profiling of athletes, which help to reduce the occurrence and recurrence of injuries. Now, this should continuously be adjusted to the athlete's condition and training schedule. So for athletes, and especially for elite athletes, it's all about performance. So they keep on training technically to get better at their performance, but to be able to balance performance training with injury prevention training is very, very important. So to strike that balance between the two different kinds of trainings should be a focus, and that's what sports physios are there for. Now, how do we devise these injury prevention strategies? Which brings me to the second point here, which is screening. So that is what we do when we get into the elite performance field. So screening is basically MSK, which is musculoskeletal, and FMS, functional movement screens, which is a long, exhaustive form of questionnaires and history taking and a lot of tests, physical assessment tests with outcome measures, which help us gain insights on injury history, medical history, any biomechanical or pathophysiological limitations that the athlete may face, the habits and tendencies athletes show in terms of movement and general agility. So what happens is this helps us to assess the injury risk of that particular athlete. It also establishes a clinical baseline for future rehabilitation. So when I know my athlete at the beginning of his schedule or his sport tournament, if that athlete happens where he came from, what results he showed on his screening tests, and with me to plan a rehabilitation program, and which helps me plan to set better goals for the athlete. So this is like an entry point for the medical and allied health. What screening also does is gives us an idea about the demands the sport puts on the athlete's body. So for example, say if you take cricket as an example, there are different roles athletes play. So a wicket keeper probably demands different abilities, whereas a fast bowler has different demands. So we get to know the requirement of that particular sport or exercise. And also lastly, what happens at this pre-competition level is that it serves as a good ice-breaking opportunity for physiotherapists as well as the other team members. So it helps develop a good rapport within the team for athletes and the professional support staff. So this is like a quick typical musculoskeletal screen that would look like. So this is a sample of a cricket pre-screening form that I have developed. So I would generally go through all personal details, look at the cricket profile of that athlete. Definitely what is important is the level he plays at. So, starting from school and club cricket to as far as probably state and international, any medical or surgical history. So any pre-existing factors that may influence performance or that may pose an inherent risk of sustaining an injury. Then any present complaint. So this is injury history based on the current injury the athlete is going through or any previous injuries that have taken place. Also, a female health is definitely reported. And then this is a huge list of different physical tests that I go through. So this is specific for cricket. Every sport, as I said, depending on the demands the sport places on the body, research shows reliable, valid tests which help you bring the risk of injury at the forefront. So those are the tests which you carry out in the athlete and help you for further information. Now let's move on to in competition, so which is on-field assessment. So our role as sports physios on field is we are skilled to be able to identify the injury by analyzing the mechanism of injury or the signs and symptoms of illness. So this is done through a sound clinical reasoning of observation and assessment skills to recognize what sort of structure may have been damaged, looking at how the injury happened. So how probably the person had a fall, or he landed inappropriately. So that gives us an idea of what structures can be damaged. So what happens is this helps us to correctly diagnose what has happened based on rapid clinical judgment, and therefore we can select appropriate treatment with that. So after the diagnosis has been done, an important feature here is appropriate referral as well. So for example, if the athlete has, sustained a huge cut and there's a lot of blood loss, and I see that he definitely needs stitches or an service, I must be able to appropriately refer him to the concerned medical facility. Or if there's an obvious fracture that has happened, I need to make him go to a orthopedic surgeon and get things done, or a sports medicine doctor for further consultation. And after all this is done, of course, it is the responsibility of the sports physios to ensure safety of continued participation. So with a good clinical judgment and a good call, it is upon the physios to sort of give a green tick on whether the athlete can go back on field and keep playing safely. What I feel is, again, very, very important on field is communication. So once your athlete has sustained any injury, I think all this relevant information has to be communicated to all members of the healthcare team present on field, and not just the healthcare team, but even the support staff and management team, so that, we smoothen the process thereafter. Now let's quickly move on to post-competition, where I think most of you know what happens, which is rehabilitation. So the rehab phase of injury begins from the time of sustenance of injury during the game and will up to a point where the athlete can safely return back to sport at optimal performance. So what happens in rehabilitation is a complete analysis of injury is done, which requires a specific knowledge of the specific sport he plays, the physical and psychological influences in different athletic contexts, any psychosocial influences that he may have in regards to rehabilitation or performance, correct knowledge of healing of structures. So patient education is very, very important. Research has shown that the more educated the patient is about his injury, the better prognosis he shows. Okay, so letting your athlete know what exactly has happened and how you have set goals for him, of course, taking into consideration what the athlete's goals are, is very, very important. So this helps us evaluate, design, and implement evidence-based sport-specific rehab strategies aiming for safe return to play. And this definitely needs to be modifiable according to the individual athlete that you're treating. Okay. And again, moving on to the last point. So as I said, good education to the patient or to the athlete is very, very important. So you give him honest, truthful advice regarding the progress of healing, and you let him know the appropriate timing of when he can return back to play. So this again is very important. So make your athlete and his family more informed about where the rehab is headed to. And then lastly, we come on to performance enhancement. So what happens is, over and above the physical rehabilitation and healing, sports physios evaluate the athlete's physical and performance related profile in order to optimize conditions for maximal performance. So this is a multidisciplinary approach that physios are able to take. they advise athletes to go and get consulted uh, by supplementing expertise of other members of the team, such as the nutritionist or the SNC trainer or the psychologist, based on information that is collected using questionnaires or observations and measurements, information regarding any influences on performance that the athlete has to go through, like say nutrition or hydration, the environmental contexts, or any mental pressures he's going through, or any difficulties in efficiency of movement. So all these surrounded factors which surround the process of healing or the process of rehabilitation must be addressed to look at enhancing performance. So it's always not just physical healing that takes place, but an athlete can go through a lot of other difficulties while he's getting rehabilitated through injury. So this, I think, is also very, very important. So performance enhancement is also done based on evidence-based strategies, and it must be done in a safe and ethical manner. Okay, so this was an overview of the role of sports physiotherapy in elite performance. Of course, we'll discuss more, I'm sure, but I've just listed down specific modalities that are used by sports physios. So we do a lot of manual and exercise therapy, a lot of joint and soft tissue mobilizations, dry needling, taping goes a lot on field. With exercise therapy, there's a lot of range of motion, strength and power training, balance, proprioception, and agility. So in conclusion, I would like to say that allied health is, always a multidisciplinary approach with teamwork. So behind the high performing athlete, it must always be a strong team of allied professionals who keep pushing him to reach his or her limits, to help him perform better with a very scientific, safe, and guided way. So yeah, I think that's about sports physiotherapy in elite performance. Thank you.
Wow, that was very insightful. Thank you so much, Dr. Tanmay. I would say that the last slide, which talks about teamwork and multidisciplinary approach, is something that we always have it in mind. And that's the reason why we have experts from various areas here. I wish we had time and more people from different areas, but due to the limited time, we have only 3 areas that we should be deliberating about. Now let's move on to the next speaker, who's again from the field of conditioning, fitness and conditioning and elite performance. I invite Dr. Ajit Mapari to brief us about the role of this area in elite performance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this platform. And if it is okay, can I have my video on so that I obviously I'm not going to present anything, but it will be a little better if I can get access to just having. I'm unable to just start my video for some reason. So if it is okay, instead of having this particular screen, is it okay if we have the video, please?
Perfect, sir. Absolutely. You may.
Somehow the host is not allowing me to start the video.
If it's okay with you to speak just without the presentation and you come live, that is, if you start your video.
That is what I wanted to start. I'm absolutely waiting for just the video.
Okay.
So I don't have any pictures. I'm not going to share the screen, but.
Okay, let me just try to find out. may I request Neha to please, Neha or Amol from Whitecoat to look into the
You just need to
permissions for starting the video. Mr. Amol from Whitecoat.
I guess
Yeah.
it's started.
Now we are able to see you, sir. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Now we are able to see you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you everyone for having me on this platform. And yes, it is always kind of interesting to talk about, especially this domain of mine. And I listened to Donovan for a while. He's a good friend of mine, and obviously a very good professional as well. And again, very well done, Tanmay. Again, she's been presenting herself as a sports physiotherapist in a big way, and it's really good to see that she's covered almost all the points. Now, before going on to discussing or talking about what sports medicine is all about, I want to kind of tell you more about the experiences that I have been having since the last few years in this field. This is very new kind of, or a novice kind of a thing that has just started to have some foothold into the system of sports in the country today. There are very, very few sports and exercise medicine consultants in the country, and because it is kind of a little overlapping field, there are a lot of orthopedic surgeons who are actually doing some sports medicine practice. That means that they kind of operate on sports people, so surgical side is taken good care by different specialties in orthopedics, and again there are subspecialties in them. Some are doing only the shoulder job, or some do specializes in knee or ankle or foot and things like that, and hand surgery. So it's kind of a vast surgical field that is there whenever the athletes or team requires some sort of a surgical help. They take help of orthopedic surgeons. The non-surgical part, which is again very crucial, which is handled by sports physicians or other sports doctors like me, and along with sports physiotherapists, which Tanmay just mentioned. Basically, what sports medicine doctor does, that he heads the whole whatever that happens in the West that I'm talking about. So he heads this particular technical umbrella, which involves sports physiotherapists, the strength and conditioning coaches, the sports science expert, the nutritionist, the sports psychologist, the massage therapists. So and obviously is linked up with the orthopedic surgeons as well. So this whole umbrella basically is kind of looked after by the sports doctor. And the reason why this is important, because he or she needs to understand the basics of all these fields, wherein it becomes easier and a transparent process to benefit athlete across multiple disciplines and multiple different ages as well. So whenever it comes to a team, for that matter, my involvement with football team, the ISL, which was there, Pune team had 4 seasons here in Pune itself, and now they've shifted to Hyderabad. But whenever I was a team doctor for this particular team, the whole technical crew is obviously from outside India, because football is still growing in India, and cricket, we are right there, we are right up. People, other world follow cricket from India, but with other sports and majority sports, we have to follow some other countries as well. So whenever we listen to Mr. Lele, obviously we'll get more insights about these things as well. But as I said, being a support system to the highly qualified technical staff, it becomes easier for giving better solutions to the players, whether it is on field or off field. Now, when you talk about a complete season, wherein it starts, as Tanmay said, pre-season and intra-season, rather during the competitions and post-competition, it becomes very, very important for analyzing every other athlete that you're involved with, not only in terms of injury prevention management, but also performance enhancement. Now, what happens in this overlapping thing is there is one aspect that is completely different from all these things, is advising them on anti-doping. So what happens is there are a lot of athletes who require medications on and off for different elements. It could be because of the pain, because of conditions they have, or it could be because of some emergency stuff that happens. So these things are taken care of by the sports medicine consultant or the sports doctors who are associated with either individually with the player or with the team or with the club or with the federations. So what needs to be done, and I would want to kind of raise this particular point, is all these people, all these participants who are kind of listening to this session since yesterday, I want to make one kind of a request. Whatever athletes or teams you are involved with, please ensure that they do not take any medications if they are playing competitive or even otherwise also, but at least when they're playing competitive level. And when we talk about elite, it becomes very, very important that whatever they consume, that has to be monitored and kind of ticked to be safe. So it is not only, as I said, medications. It could be some nutritional products. It could be some supplementations. It could be any regular tablets, capsules that they want to consume. Of course, nutritionists will play a part when it comes to supplementation and all, but medications, there are a lot of elite athletes and super elite athletes in the world who have been kind of got affected by taking some medications, which probably they are not aware of, or some people take sports enhancers to get better performances out of them in some major competitions for whatever reasons, and they can get caught into doping. So this becomes a very, very important aspect of this whole process of athlete management. When it comes to performance enhancement, as Tanmay said, it is very important to understand that what level of athlete that we're dealing with. Once the assessment, a complete assessment is done by with the help of either a strength and conditioning coach or a sports physiotherapist, it is very important for the sports doctor or the sports medicine consultant to sit together with these particular experts and have a concise kind of analytical report which can be discussed with the coach or the team management. So as far as different limbs are concerned, now obviously we'll be hearing about sports psychology as well. Very, very important aspect, which again should not be kept on the back burner. It is very, very important for elite athletes, especially, to take help of experts in not only managing their training schedules from the mental aspect, but they should also kind of take help during the whole course of their career. So as I said, there are overlaps when it comes to services that a sports medicine consultant can deliver. The major aspect should be important. It's not only about having knowledge about the medical illnesses and otherwise, but having a very good knowledge about sports injuries, about diagnosing, about referring them to whether whether they need some surgical options or surgical opinions, be it acute or chronic, getting proper investigations done, having a transparent kind of a system wherein all which I spoke about under the umbrella needs to have a very concise kind of a format where they work towards benefit of the athlete as well as the team. So I guess it will be more better for me to answer a few questions if they come at the end of the session, wherein it will be more specific or other more interactive, and I would like a lot of participants to kind of either come up with something that they have in mind where I can answer to. So yeah, thank you so much for having this platform. So just have sharing these ideas of what a sports doctor or sports does, and yes,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
you, Dr. Ajit. As always, it was very light and very easy to understand. You've always been an expert in, making us understand these things so easily. Thank you so much. I will now move on to the next speaker, who's from the field of sports psychology, and I take pleasure to invite Dr. Janki uh, to throw light on the aspects of sports psychology and its role in elite.
Sure. Would it be possible for me also to turn my video on?
Yes. Again, I have to request the whiteboard people to.
Sure.
Yeah.
I still don't have access.
No, we are able to see the screen which you just shared. Some
Yeah.
screen. Yeah.
I'm going to share the screen, but will also help if the video can be on while I'm speaking.
Okay.
Well, let me just begin so that I don't waste time. And if the video can be turned on in the meanwhile,
Yes.
that will be great.
Yes.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here today. Honored to be here, and also very good to see some of my colleagues, so Dr. Ajit Mapari and others, and good to interact with everyone. I'm actually going to spend 10 minutes talking about the sports psychology consultancy that I run. The reason being that it's one of the very few in the country, and what is the role that that plays in the field of sports psychology in India. And of course, I will also be speaking about what sports psychology is, and what is the role of a sports psychologist when we work with athletes. So to begin with, I'm actually going to start with I'm going to show you all a video, and this is a video that we actually often show athletes to help them understand what sports psychology or mental training is, and the reason, every other field within sports science or sports quite objective. So whether it's nutrition, physiology, whether even with the work of the physiotherapist for that matter, you all saw the screening that a physiotherapist would typically go through, and it's all very objective because it's measurable. Whereas what happens with the mind is, these are things that are perceived within the mind of an athlete, and a lot of times it's abstract. It's something that you have to it's something that you base on their feelings and thoughts. And although there are assessments and questionnaires that can be used, but a lot of it is based on the assessment and the diagnosis of the sports psychologist. And because it's an abstract kind of a area, I'm going to kind of show that video to help you all understand. Before I show that video, I would just kind of like to tell you how we began with Samiksha and why we decided to get into this field within the country. Me and my colleague Gayatri Vartak, both of us played sport at an elite level as juniors. Gayatri, of course, also continued to play as a senior athlete and was top 100 in the world. And it was in our own experience of having played sport is when we realized that technically, especially at the junior level, all our athletes are very strong in terms of skill, technique, strategy, tactics, and even, to do with the fitness. There was a lot of advancement, has been a lot of advancement over the last many years. However, we often experienced ourselves that, there were times where, for example, you played really well in a practice match or a practice session, but did not have that kind of a performance in an actual match. And what happened 15 years back was, the player would again go onto the field or the court and train extra hours, thinking that it's the lack of training that is leading him or her to lose competitions and matches. But often it was to do with the mind and nothing to do with the um, um, technique or the tactical aspect of the sport. And of course, 15 years back, there was no specialist in India in this field. And, we felt that if, we went through issues like this, we were sure that there were many other Indian athletes who also went through similar things with not knowing what to do. And that is where our interest in the field of sport and performance psychology really came in. So after playing tennis, I did my bachelor's in psychology, sport and performance from the UK. Also did my master's in psychology of sport and exercise. And I also hold a PhD in sports science and psychology. So, it was actually through our own experiences that, we felt that there was a need for something like that in India. Sports psychology in India is in its very nascent stages, so to say. We started with Samiksha 12 years ago, and that is when applied sports psychology in India really took its first step. So it's been an exciting journey for us, but also challenging because there have been no previous frameworks or methods to follow in the Indian sports population. So it has its pros and cons, but nonetheless, it's been extremely satisfying. However, in the Western world, sports psychology has been around for at least last 50 to 60 years. And there has been a lot of advancement in terms of, theories, concepts, and also on the applied area where sports psychologists are attached and working with every national and international team. So we're still, we're still kind of in its early times, but definitely catching up. So over the last 10, 12 years, like I said, we've worked with several academies and associations across the country, and the growth is of course there now. Like I said, I'm just going to quickly show you all the video to help you all understand what sports psychology really is. So just give me a second. Jim, a young athlete, is jumping on the trampoline. He is trying to jump as high as possible with all his might. He is also maximizing his technical skills and physical strength while doing so. Now, on the right, you can see that Jim is jumping on the trampoline, but with a harness. This harness is what helps him jump much higher than he could previously, while also ensuring that he does not fall down. Mental training is like this harness. It helps you perform to your very best while also making sure that you don't fall down. Mental training is this support that every player needs. So train your minds with us to be a champion. So like I said, hopefully this gave you a good idea about the role of mental training. The role of mental training is really divided into two areas. One is peak performance and performance enhancement, like you all saw, where an athlete is always, of course, trying his best, but needs that extra support to be able to achieve his peak performance, like the other allied fields as well. So whether it's sports nutrition or help of masseuse or rehab and other sports science fields. Mental training is also something that plays an important role. So that's the first role that is involved in mental training. And the second role of mental training is really to understand that athletes will face success and failure both. They will face obstacles and challenges. And we often find that they find it difficult to recover, whether it's to do with mistakes that happen during a match or whether it's poor performances in tournaments. And that is where a role of a sports psychologist is also very important, where the athlete needs that support to make sure that he's not only physically recovered after a match, but also mentally recovered and is ready for the next match or the next tournament. So just like everybody has reiterated before, sports psychology is really that one missing link in. A couple of things that I feel are important for everybody to understand are some of the myths that are around about sports psychology. One of the myth is that sports psychology is curative in nature, meaning that when there is a problem, when an athlete is facing a problem, whether it could be anxiety, depression, that is when he or she approaches a sports psychologist. That's true. That's one part of sports psychology, but that's not only when mental training is done. Mental training is like any other form of training that an athlete does. So just like he would do his physical training every single day, just like he would do his technical training every single day, that is how he would also follow mental training on an every single day basis. So it is also preventive in nature, meaning it prepares the athletes for different situations that he is going to face. So whether it's to be able to handle pressure, whether it's to stay confident, whether it is to stay motivated, these are mental skills that every athlete requires, and mental training helps them hone these skills. So typically you would think of going to a psychologist when there is a problem, and that is true with every other area of psychology, really. So the last box that you see, mainstream versus sport, there is a major difference in the role of a psychologist, a general psychologist, as against a sports psychologist. Typically, a psychologist will see clients or patients when there is only a problem, but that's not how a sports psychologist works, because the role is also kind of engulfed in performance enhancement, and mental training is to be followed every day, unlike what other psychologists do. So I think it's also important for everyone to be aware that athletes do need to work with specialized sports psychologists and not any other psychologist, because there is a wide difference in terms of the working that happens with the client. The approach a lot of times, of course, is curative of clinical psychologists or counseling psychologists, because they are trying to solve problems. Whereas as sports psychologists, we are working with absolutely healthy population. They don't have any problems as such. They are there to get better at their sport. So I think that's a major difference to understand. And the last thing is also that it's often believed that mental training is something that only the elite do. Yes, they might recognize it better, but it is something that actually starts at a young age, right? When you start playing competitive sports. So around the age of 10, 11, 12 is when mental training also begins. So if you are playing a sport competitively at any level, just like you would do your fitness, similarly, an athlete will also do mental fitness or mental training right from that age. And that's also when it's been the most effective. The older the athlete is when they begin mental training, the more difficult it actually becomes for the players. So the younger, the better. Um, who can it benefit? We often just think about athletes and teens, which is true. They're the major population that we work with. But mental training can also benefit coaches, and there is a lot of cross working within other support staff also, like everyone has mentioned. So there is benefit from them as well. And especially with athletes below the age of 18, a lot of our work is involved with sports parents, because they have the biggest influence on their children as athletes. And our work is heavily involved in working with parents as well. So along with individual players and teams, coaches and sports parents are also the kind of population that we work with. Um, the area of work within sports psychology typically happens in leagues. So, we directly the sports. We with and West Foundation within pressure. Motivation, recovery, and they may have a go ahead from their doctors and physios. mentally they have still not recovered from the injury. So let's say a badminton player who's gone through an injury and has recovered, but every time he or she lunges on court, he may feel that he's going to get injured again. Now that has to do something with the mind and also needs to be addressed. So that's also an area that we work with. Anxiety and stress management, teamwork and team building, dealing with organizational stressors is also a major area, and also working with coach-athlete relationship, especially within individual sports. So these are the areas of work. Um, just to give you an example of, you know, the effect of mental training, or, what the role of a sports psychologist can be. We've often heard say about the South African cricket team, and they've always failed at a major stage, let's say in a knockout stage of a game or an important, semi-final stage. And they were tagged as the chokers, the South African national team. And there were several reasons for why that happened. Now that's an example of a team that couldn't handle the pressure and couldn't manage their emotions at crucial situations. Whereas let's take an example of, let's say, the German football team. They've really worked as a well-oiled machine and have worked together as a cohesive unit. And there are also reasons for why that has happened. And that's where the role of a sports psychologist really comes in. I'll give you all an example of, say, someone from the South African cricket team. Maybe you all have heard of a cricketer called Daryl Cullinan, who always felt pressure when he was batting against Shane Warne. And, he would never be able to perform against him. And, after many years, he was asked whether he was able to reflect on why that happened. And he said that he would be so overwhelmed by the fact that he was facing Shane Warne that he could never focus on his batting. And eventually he realized that the simplest thing that he would had actually have to do was to focus on the ball. And rather than doing that, his focus used to be Shane Warne. Now, if at that stage he would have been able to correct his focus, it would have probably helped him. And that is the role of a sports psychologist, which comes in at that point to help an athlete identify at the right time what the issue is and how it can be corrected. Just like, in physical training, an athlete follows different exercises for different parts of the body, or you have different routines that you follow for stamina, strength, stability, speed. Similarly, there are different mental exercises typically that an athlete learns and follows for various aspects. So different exercises for concentration, for confidence, so on and so forth. So I think the old attitude of, leaving emotions at home does not work. Often athletes were told to kind of keep them aside and get into the playing arena and play, but that doesn't happen. We're working with whole athletes, and the mind of an athlete needs to be considered. And that's one of the missing links. Just some information that I'm going to give on how one can become a sports psychologist in India. And I'm doing that because we do not have many formal courses, and we get a lot of students asking about what the process could be like. So to become a sports psychologist, you definitely need to do a bachelor's in psychology in India. Like I said, we don't have too many formal courses, so you could take up a master's in counseling or organizational psychology, because there is a lot of overlap within sports psychology and counseling or organizational psychology, and then train at least 1 year under supervision with a experienced sports psychologist. That's one route, of course, along with continued professional development. The other route that students can take is to do a bachelor's in psychology in India, and then study abroad, where you can do an MSc in sports psychology in the UK, US, or Australia, and then train under supervision for 6 months. Because master's courses in the West wholly focus on the theoretical aspect of sports psychology, but do not give exposure to applied sports psychology, because they have a different route. So in the West, even if you do a master's, before you actually are able to work, you do have to do an applied route in sports psychology as well. So that's about it. We also have have many students who before dwell into sports psychology heavily because it can be quite an investment in terms of time and money, especially if you are going to go abroad. We actually started a certificate course, which is a 1 month self-paced course to give students and other professionals an understanding of what sports psychology really is. If you are to work as a sports psychologist in India, what is the role that you have? What are the different issues that you work with? And if y'all are interested, you can feel free to contact us eventually later on. Our website is on there. So if you have any questions in terms of how to kind of pursue this field in India, then feel free to contact us. So that's about it from me for now, and I'll be happy to take on your questions later on.
Perfect, Dr. Janki. I was, in fact, going to start the question and session with this last slide that you showed. How can we, get into the field of sports psychology? And you've already answered that. We have already heard from pure sciences. Let's now move on to something which is very interesting and which is, I think, a very important area in terms related to elite sports performance. And who else is better than Honorable Lele sir to speak about how journalism is linked with elite sports performance. Over to you, sir. May I request you to please begin your talk.
Shraddha, you bowled the biggest snowball because other three panelists are doctor, you are doctor as well. So feeding me against this elite people is unjust, unfair, but this is on a lighter note. But I would say that journalists have got a major role in enhancing all these attributes. But let me be very honest, I'm not a learned person. I haven't done even a bachelor's in journalism. I'm a cricketer first, diehard cricketer first, a sportsman first, and that has taken me to places. And for last, not many, but last more than 30 years, I'm pursuing my passion, which is sports and journalism, and God has been kind to me. So I will not be able to throw some light from a scientific background, but let me be honest and go deep down. Um, After covering cricket for last 30 years and playing some cricket for 25 years, I have understood that India is a sports loving country and not a sports playing country. This is an honest suggestion I would like to make. So from journalist point of view, our main aim should be how we can drive. We continuously keep on saying, oh my God, 130 crores Indians, 130 crores Indians. Most of them are young kids. But how we are going to drive this young India from just a sport loving country to a sport playing country? Um, because Shraddha and my other panelists, we all know that we hear this typical line that, oh my God, we lost yesterday. And suddenly we think that, oh, how we lost yesterday, we. So a Kasbah paid guy is telling his friend that Manchester United lost in a Premier League match. And he's saying, oh my God, we lost yesterday. Are these guys football loving kids? Yes, they are. Are they football playing kids? Not many of them. I will narrate one small incident which happened few years back in England. Indian cricket team was on tour to England, and the first match we lost in Nottingham or something like that. And the second test match was at Lord's in London. And we had a nice get together at former Ranji Trophy player Madhu Gupte's house. And one of his friends was Dr. Pathak, a short, learned, very aggressive kind of a doctor who loves his sport. But he was saying, "Oh my God, Indian team is of no use. They are basically not paying attention to their fitness. They are lazy guys." And I was continuously saying that it's not like that, doctor. They are working hard on their fitness. They are trying their best. How can you say so? Just look at their bowlers, Stuart Broad and James Anderson. They are strong and stout. And look at our guys, Bhuvneshwar Kumar. Does he eat enough? So I was pretty annoyed. And after listening to his banter for say 5 minutes, I asked him, Doctor, can I ask you 2 questions? So he said reluctantly, why I should answer? He said, just simple questions. So he said, okay, go on. I asked him, are your kids 6 feet 3 inches tall, and do they have a blue colors of their eyes? So he was very pissed off. He asked me, this is a stupid question. This is not the way you should ask question, Mr. Lele. I said, I ask you a simple question, that are your kids 6 feet 3 inches tall? He said, no, how they can be? I'm 5 feet 7 inches. How my kids can be for 6 feet 3 inches? And I'm an Indian, and my color of my eyes is black. So my kids are also having black eyes. So I said, you answer my question. And he was pissed off again. He said, what the hell you are talking about? I just politely told him that in India, we pass on our genes to our kids. So be very honest, very honest. Put your hand on your heart and say, do you go out for a run? So he said, no. So that's what I'm telling you. Even Sachin Tendulkar's father and mother, his parents, never used to go out for a walk or for a jog. So Sachin Tendulkar was a first generation athlete. The moment Sachin passed on those genes, his kid, Arjun, is 6 feet 3 inches tall. He's strong and stout. What I'm trying to tell you all is time has come that we should tell this thing loud and clear, that our kids, especially the urban kids, are growing up in too much of protection. Too much of protection. I have seen mothers are behind their kids all the time. They are carrying their tennis kit bag or cricket kit, and the kid is walking away from them as if he's a big star. So this is not going to help India. So honestly, I would like to say that how sports is going to help our kids, whether they will be good athletes or not, that only time can tell. But we as a journalist should tell parents, kids, that you have to pursue one sport or another. Uh, Janki was aptly telling incidents about South African cricket. In South Africa, they teach kid from say 5 years old how he should run. So the basic art of running. In summer, they will pursue hockey, football, and cricket. In winters, they will go out for swimming. They will play rugby. So in India, we together we have to inculcate this habit or culture of sport in our kids. And we as journalists, we should not just narrate stories and report on Virat Kohli and PV Sindhu and Sunil Chhetris. We should tell our our Indian friends, our Indian brothers and sisters, parents and kids, that sports is a must thing for each and every person, be it a 5-year-old kid or 70-year-old guy. Now we have realized in pandemic that how fitness is important. So lastly, I would like to say that it is our responsibility as journalists to drive Indian population from sports loving to sports playing thing. In earlier days, there used to be Angtha Bahadurs. What do you mean by Angtha Bahadur? Those who cannot write and read. So if they have to complete any formality, the thumb impression will be taken. Now, there is another Angtha Bahadur community which is growing fast, and that is crazy and frightening, and that is this Anthabadars. These Anthabadar generation is growing fast. All of us know that. So from sports loving country to sports playing country, how together we can inculcate this sporting culture in India, that is the biggest quest for me. I'm striving for that. And with your help, I think we can slowly but surely will get to that goal of India as a sports playing country. Dr. Shraddha, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. As always, a very a very lighter note, but a very important and valuable insight. In fact, while you said that we are a sports loving country and not a sports playing country, I was thinking of asking you a question. How can you suggest any strategies to turn it into sports playing country? But you already mentioned that the different ways of becoming a sports playing country. Sir, my question to you would be related to your experience with elite sports persons, for top class athletes. I would want to understand how different are these top class athletes. What is it that makes them different from the masses? And if we get to know this, we can start building these qualities slowly as the child grows.
The modern day heartthrob is Virat Kohli. So knowing him, seeing him a bit for last few years, I have realized that these guys are super athletes for the simple reason there is no difference between two P's, potential to performance. Potential is here and performance is here, or hard work is here. Potential is here and hard work is here. They always match as far as all the top athletes, be it PV Sindhu or Saina Nehwal or Sunil Chetri or Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma, any of them. What they believe, what they plan, they will execute it to the perfection. Just few days back, I was having word with Virat and I asked him about his fitness and eating habits, fitness habits. And he told me that I do it for a simple reason that whatever I wish on the cricket field, my body should help me to execute it to the perfection. So a hardcore Punjabi guy, he left butter chicken 6-7 years back. He stopped eating butter chicken for last 6-7 years. He is not having rotis. He's not having any junk food. Junk food, leave apart junk food. He's having very, very healthy lifestyle. And the work ethics are super, absolutely super. Shraddha, you won't believe. He was getting married to Anushka Sharma, something in Italy, some remote village. And marriage ceremony was supposed to happen, say, at 11:30. In the morning also, he completed his workout. Because he said, Lele, Sunandan sir, like taking a shower, it's a daily routine. For me, workout is a daily routine. If I don't do that, I feel uneasy. So it's not something they are working to try to get better at, but the only thing is they plan and they execute it to the T. And that is the difference between a common athlete and a super athlete.
Thank you, sir. Actually, hearing that live example of how Virat Kohli performed his workout on the day of his wedding also is very inspirational. In fact, to all those who are listening in this workshop. I would say now, if we have to develop these kind of athletes, we also have to develop such kind of parents. In fact, sports parenting skills is something that I feel is the need of the hour. And therefore, before asking another question, I would go on to Dr. Janki and ask her her experience about how she deals with certain common psychological barriers that elite athletes face, and how you also take, I mean, the sports parenting. How do you cater to the sports parenting requirements? Yes, Dr. Chandra.
I think like Mr. Sunandan Dele sir said that a lot of times we observe that children are quite overprotected, and if we want them to be disciplined on field, on the court, it has to start right from the household. So for example, waking up a 12-year-old child to go for his practice, it should be the child's responsibility. At 12 years old, a child should be able to wake up himself by setting an alarm. If the parent is going to wake him up, if the parent is going to fill in the kit bag, it often translates on field because they are not able to take their own decisions on court. So I think it's important to educate parents to help children become more independent, take their own responsibility, take decisions for themselves, and really empower them to do these things. I think that's the first thing. I think second thing is that whether it's children or parents, competition should be healthy at a young age, whether it's 12 or under 14 or under 16. Parents often become extremely competitive and compare their children with other players, which I think is only detrimental to the confidence of the child. If anything, then you can compare your own child's performance to how he performed in the previous tournament or a year before. But comparing the child to another child does not help your child's confidence; it worsens it. So I think these are some of the areas that we work with parents, and it's more about educating them, helping them understand. We also do a lot of work in terms of communication. So if your child loses a match, if the player loses a match, what should you say? What should you not say? How do you understand your own players? So for example, there are players who after a match would like to be on their own, would like to do their own analysis, or would like to do the analysis with the coach. And that is the role of the coach, not the parent really. So it's also important for parents to understand that just like if a child goes to school, you drop the child at the gate and you leave the responsibility with the parents, with the teachers, with complete trust. And coaches should also be given that amount of trust once the child is with the coach at the academy. So to understand whether whether you should analyze the matches with the child or you should not do that, what kind of questions you should ask the child, what you should not say to the child. So I think it's a challenging job for the parent as well. When you become a parent, you're not trained, and being a sport parent is even tougher. So that support is also required. So I think becoming more aware as a sport parent is something that is necessary.
Sir, you have, if you have a question or you would like to
just
add.
wanted to add to what my elite colleague said, that parents should, if your kid is playing a team sport, for example, if a kid is playing cricket, so once he come back home, you shouldn't ask कि आपने कितने बनाए, how much runs did you score. You should always ask first question, match में क्या हुआ, because that will shift your focus from being an individualistic, selfish guy to a team guy. So first thing first, parents should always ask कि match में क्या हुआ, and not how did you perform.
Wow, yes, that's a different spirit to the reaction that parents should have. We understand how important is psychology. Now we also need to understand how important are the sports sciences with respect to developing the child right from the entry point. So my question is to Dr. Mapari and also to Dr. Tanmay regarding how the sports sciences, of course, they cater to elite elite sportsmen, but can the sports sciences be also offered to the athletes at entry level? And if yes, how?
Yes, basically, let me tell you, this is something which is very interesting to kind of share, that what happens in our case, and I guess, most of my colleagues will agree that a lot of support goes to the athletes who are already performing at the higher level, And in India, as Sunandan sir said, that we need to change the culture. When we see a lot of kids playing at every corner of the street, every playground is full, that is where the culture is going to change. And let me put this kind of a perspective of sports science a little different. What I believe, or rather, I kind of support this whole change of culture from a sports loving to a sports playing country, that the expertise that we have today in our country, be it from psychology and sports physiotherapy, or what we do at Fit to Sport, I think it is more important for us to support the very younger, tender age group, giving them the best of the facilities, or rather giving them the best of science support, and help them become like champions later. So what happens here, that they are like kind of put into some academies, or some playgrounds where they just go and probably play, but that is exactly where they need uh, like what again Sundar sir said, that the younger kids are to learn how to run. Now running is basically a very kind of a basic quality that every individual has, but there are techniques that you need to inculcate at a very younger age. And that is what Donovan was talking about. The long-term athletic development program has to happen actually not on paper, but it has to implement directly. There are instances in science which say that a 5-year-old have these qualities as far as physical abilities go. Their motor control needs to be, kind of improved. So when they go from learn to train, from train to compete, from compete to go to the elite level, this is where the science is going to play a major role. And it's not about this 130 crores every time, before every Olympics, we keep talking about these issues. That such a big country, so many players. It is not about that. It is about people not understanding the importance of sports science at a very tender age. And what we have started to do and educate parents, and as I said, that at Fit2Sport we see a 9-year-old, and we are trying to tell them that don't burn them out in their teens. They need to perform at the highest level. They need to start somewhere now. So sports science plays a massive role, as I said, in developing these qualities at a very younger and in a very scientific way. So somebody asked, when you should start weight training. Now, weight training for a kid can be started scientifically under supervision as early as a 9 or a 10-year-old. But we don't have that kind of an expertise, and we treat them as what do you call it? Young, rather half the age of an adult. So what these trainers do is, unfortunately, they just cut down the weight into half and they start training the kids. This is not something that is science. So I can give you examples where people have actually lost their careers, or rather tracked by some massive injuries that they come across in these lives, because they're treated as half adults, and that is not something science is all about. So as I said, I can talk all day, but I'll let people get into it. But as I said, yes, sports science and sports medicine has to be inculcated right at the tender age, and we'll definitely see a good change in the future.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So Dr. Tanmay would want to add to this perspective.
Yes, I think I'm so happy right now to see everybody on the same page, because I completely agree. And even, I wanted to mention how Dr. Donovan sir spoke about what needs to be done at the foundation level. So again, as it's literally the same, like even Ajit sir right now said that the focus right now is only on athletes who play at an elite level or a competitive level. But if even I have seen a number of examples where, the technical training is present, but they just don't go and perform at a competitive level. And why is that? So there are a lot of missing links. So right from sports psychology, which was like a beautiful insight actually, and even sports science. It just plays such a big role in forming habits to efficiently move. So, like running or jumping or, jump landing. There are techniques where you have to land properly so as to save yourself from sustaining injuries. And this is, I'm sure, not taught at, club level sports or just regular academies, sports academies. They're just physical education coaches. But I think what needs to be done is, inculcate a team of sports science professionals who can help you advise on how a specific functional movement needs to be done so as to for athletes to be able to apply that into their sport. And habits and tendencies, they just start forming at a very younger age. So when you say you just ask 5 and 6 year olds to just run, they will start learning. But when you can start training them about how to run, or specific muscle chain integration and motor skills that need to be developed in order to run correctly, if I might say so, it will definitely get them a habit of doing that when they enter into competitive sport. So yeah, I think it's slowly coming up in India, but there's still a long way to go. So I think we produce sportsmen, but we should start to look at producing athletes. You know what I mean? So it's not just the technical training, but you should teach them to be athletic, teach them to try and push their limits, but at the same time have a very sturdy and flexible at the same time mechanical body. So yeah.
Uh, okay, perfectly. I totally agree with this. Before I move on to Dr. Ajit, I just want to say something here. I am from the field of physical education, teacher education. So what we do is we develop or prepare teachers who will take care of kids from grade, age 2 onwards. And I think it becomes pertinent for me to say that it is our responsibility to, look into this, to team up with you all, and to enable our teachers to teach their the next generations. In addition to this, I would say psychology, sports science is equally important, but this needs to be publicized. And what we read in papers is only about yesterday's match, or maybe the top level sports. We never get to read about the mass level sport. We never get to read about what's the requirement of this, like we were discussing. We have never read about how important is psychology, or how important is physiotherapy, even for masses. So if the journalism part can take care of the publishing this, it will help all of us. I believe Dr. Ajit has to add
Yeah,
this.
basically, before I forget, sometimes I talk a little too much and miss out on important points. So I just want to make one kind of very particular observation that I've seen over the last 20 years. As a country, as we spoke about, again, the culture, one thing that is completely missing is professionalism at every level, I'm telling you. So we are all emotionally driven people, and so are the kids, and so are the parents. So as Janki said, the parents needs to be counseled and told them not to be the coaches, and exactly what the kids should understand at a very early age, that they need to be professional. Now, how to be professional is something that is very difficult to explain, because professionalism will have a complete umbrella of itself. And I'll tell you, what Virat did is professional. He was being professional when he was a kid. He was probably professional on the day of his wedding, and he's been a professional today as well. So it comes, and that is what makes them great. That is what makes them, there. So whenever I interacted with a lot of international athletes as well along the last few years, be it in different sports, I see that there is a small element of professionalism which is there in them, which makes them different. And I'm not talking only about athletes being professional. I have a very, very genuine request and a humble kind of a statement that I want to make, that professionalism has to be at the level of academics, at the level of coaching, And especially, coaches needs to be extremely professional. They cannot play their mental cards or emotional cards every time, the athlete wants to kind of move on from their academy or from their umbrella to somewhere else. And parents should understand that what will the coach say if we try to move them? If we understand our limitations and kind of help athletes to move forward, I think that is the best way going forward.
Right, sir. As very rightly said, professionalism is the key to reaching higher level. I believe not everyone can be elite athlete, but I feel that every child should play. Every child should be active. In fact, every individual should be physically active, mentally involved in the physical activity. And despite of you all being experts for special athletes, I believe your role is equally important even at masses. My question to Janki and Dr. Janki and Sunandan sir would be now, if we have to bring this professionalism into athletes and the entire team, what are some of the majors? I have a long list of questions, but I believe there are a lot of participants who want to ask questions. So I would, this would be my last question. How can we bring professionalism in all of us?
So let me answer from a psychology perspective. Just like a child develops physically, you said that, for example, your teachers teach children from the age of 2 onwards. And with physical development, again, it's very easily something that's observable. You can see the height of the child growing, you can see the weight of the child growing. So physical development is something you can see how he runs, you can see how he jumps. So it's easier to observe and to make a judgment of how the child is physically developing. But the same thing with the mind is very difficult. So just like there are physical milestones, a child also has mental milestones that he or she has to reach. And a lot of times it's the misjudgment of the coaches, support staff, teachers about the children. And that's why our expectations from them also are sometimes inaccurate and unrealistic. To give you an example, let's say a concept like commitment, to show commitment is something that a child at the age of 12, 13 approximately is when a child can show commitment. Whereas competitive sport in today's day starts under 8, under 10, in chess, maybe under 7 also. And we are expecting children to show commitment at that age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, which is actually an unrealistic expectation. And that kind of hinders with this making a professional atmosphere for the child, because we don't know what we are supposed to expect from each stage. And I think it's important to understand the stages of development that a child goes through psychologically also, to make sure that the expectation from the coach, from the parent, from the academy, from the support staff is appropriate. So I think at the mass level, with an institute like yours, where so many teachers are having an impact on so many children, I think it's important to have that kind of an understanding, to make sure that we're setting the right environment. I think the motivational climate that is created, whether it's in a school or an academy, has to be positive, has to be warm, and only then I think the sense of professionalism um, will also develop. I'll give you an example. So let's say a child is let's say you're learning how to swim, okay, and you go for your training for good 1 year, and your coach tells you that you're ready to swim now and you should participate in a competition. And you get all ready, you feel you're prepared that for the competition, and you dive into the swimming pool at your event, and the swimming pool is completely frozen, it's almost like ice. Will we be able to swim? The answer is no. So even though you know how to swim, if the swimming pool is freezing cold, you're not going to be able to swim. And similarly for a child, if the environment is cold, it is not a warm environment, the sense of professionalism, the sense of growth, and for the child to be able to perform will not happen. So I think it is really also our role as parents, coaches, support staff, team, academies, to make sure that the environment is absolutely appropriate for the child, to make sure that we have a professional atmosphere.
May I request Sunandan sir to tell his perspective on professionalism?
3 points, Shraddha, 3 points. First thing is parent or coaches should realize that your wish list should not be a goal for an athlete. Second thing is, be it parent or coach or anyone, he should lead by example, because parents normally expect everything from a kid, but they don't lead by example. And third most important point from my perspective is a process of self-realization. How much you trust a discipline or a work ethic into a kid or into an athlete. The moment he realizes that the importance of what his coach or a physio or anyone trainer is telling him, this process of self-realization is so important. The moment you arrive at that point, the self-realization, then everything changes.
So I think it's the philosophy of life, sir. Self-realization, as per the Maslow's need of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I would want to now. Yes, Tanmay, Dr. Tanmay has to add something to this.
I'm sorry, just a quick addition to professionalism from my point of view as well. So I feel all of this, from how the athlete comes into competitive sport and what sort of professional environment he should be in, which is all right. But from a coaching perspective or a sports science perspective, what I also feel is, like old school coaches, they used to feel that they are everybody. Like they will coach technical training, they will be doctors, they will be physical therapists, they will advise on nutrition. But I think, and that does come with experience. I don't disagree that they know a lot of, that they don't know a lot of things. Of course, they might know, but they may not always be able to clinically justify why they are taking a step. So, and recognizing that there are professionals available and, experts in their own field, I think coaches and sports science personnel should understand what the limit or the scope of their practice is, and be able to identify when an athlete needs advice from another professional, which may be out of your scope. So I think even that needs to come, as in professional practice, because like all the novice academies that have, literally the coach is everybody for most students. So I think even from a coaching perspective, you should know where you should stop and try and refer the athlete to the relevant professional.
I totally agree and accept your conviction here. We must reach out. We must reach out to the experts and not, lean on to the all-in-one guru kind of person. Earlier, we did have that kind of approach. Like my coach used to be the only one who would take care of my nutrition, my injuries, my psychology, and everything. But since now we have specialists, in fact, super specialists, we must, take the services and guidance from them. But to add to this, I would ask Dr. Mapari and Dr. Tanmay, how far reached are these sports science services in our country? Do we really have those, available, easily available?
Definitely, it is. As I said, it is coming up to a great extent. Last 5 years, we've seen a lot of good, rather sports science centers that are coming up. A lot of experts who were there outside the country, they have come in now back and they've started working as well. There are two aspects to this whole thing. One is just having a center and having experts in that center. So sports science, as I said, is a very, very broad and it's kind of very elaborate kind of a setup that we are talking about, which are very few rather these people who represent the country, the athletes. Now, when I'm talking about having centers, it could be as compact as what happens with franchisee models that you see around coming up with, wherein there are a lot of technologies that are coming into these particular sports science and sports performances. So these things are coming up, no doubt. They should be not only, athletes should not only kind of go there at basic level as well, not wait until they start performing. But yes, as I said, a lot of experts are there across the country. You need to take help of those people, understand what experiences they come up with. And it is not, as I said, only one particular person. As Tanmay also said, it needs a group of professionals to cater to all the needs of that particular athlete or team. So yeah, they are coming up, and I think very happy to see a lot of professionals working in this field currently.
Thank you for guiding us about the availability of services. There are questions coming from the audience as well, from the participants as well. Like Dr. Tanmay said that you should go to the expert, but somebody says that, but ma'am, only coach is present on the sports field or the sports training center. Now, how do we help the coach to take care of all this and lead? We take the athlete to the specialist.
Yeah, I think this is a problem that is faced by many, because as Dr. Mapari sir also said, that it is coming up, but it is still unknown, or probably the people don't want to get out of the comfort zone and employ sports science professionals. Maybe there are like a host of reasons for that, but what I feel is, to be able to identify professionals in and around your city or your academy is very, very important, because yes, the professionals are coming up. They want to work effectively in the sporting world, in the sporting society. So it's just looking out for them and making sure that you have some sort of association with the sports doctor or the sports physio or a nutritionist and psychologist. So the moment you establish that association, the coach has a sort of an open platform to help athletes get referred to the professionals in a timely manner. So I think it's just, just look outside the box and look for professionals. And I'm sure they're all, like physios like me and sports doctors and nutritionists, they're all also looking for opportunities to be able to work in the athletic world and, help better their performance. So I think it's just looking outside and helping getting associated with sports science professionals.
Absolutely. I feel, I think we need to have a referral system developed, since coach is the only first contact person with the athlete, and coach is somebody who observes the small little changes which are very important and relevant and which needs expertise from you all. So what kind of referral system can be developed is one of my questions. And how can journalism help us, throw light on all this and educate everyone, to educate coaches, common people to, sort this issue? Dr. Mapari has to say something, and then I will ask the other experts.
Yeah, basically, just to add to whatever you said, that how this referral system needs to come up. So basically, it is not about having a referral system. Again, I come back to being professional. So once the coach understand their limitations, it is very easy for the coach to refer it to somebody. The biggest problem which we have seen, in our this society currently is the egos needs to kind of, they have a lot of egos where, why should I send these athletes to, wherever, either to a different coach or to a professional to take some help. If the coaches understand that there is a need, then you don't need this referral system so-called. He just needs to take help of these experts, because as I said, I'm a sports medicine consultant, or my colleagues who are there at Fit to Sport handle different verticals, be it sports physio or whatever, sports nutritionist and psychologist, but we are not coaches. So we understand that we don't want to step into the coach's shoes, and we just want to have a support system to them and coaches are supreme. I mean, I consider them as the biggest pillars of this particular sporting community, and coaches can make or break the athlete or the team. So I feel that, if coaches take help from all the related experts, they can give much more to the athlete or the team rather than just giving them on their own. With due respect to whatever they understand about the sport or rather the other sciences, but I think they should definitely go out of the way to take help of experts in having just one thought in their mind is performance or rather benefit of the athlete or the coach, and not something to do on their own. They'll automatically get their name and fame and money, but if their intentions are to work towards benefit of the player or the athlete or the team, I think everything will fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of Sai coaches here in the participants, and I believe now, and they had these questions because coaches are the first contact, and now I think that they have got their answers. Over to you, Sunandan sir.
Shraddha, I'm a cricketer. I'm not a learned person, I'm a cricketer. If you want to form a winning team, you need a fast bowler who can bowl with the new ball. When the ball gets old, you need spinners. Whoever the bowler, you need a good wicket keeper. And you need backing of runs, so you need good batting battery for your team. At the same time, you need a missing link to fill in. You need an all-rounder. Okay, a bowler cannot bowl the ball and keep the wickets. At the same time, a batsman cannot bowl few overs with the new ball. That is the case with a good cricketing team. Same is the case when you want to build an athlete. You need a good sports psychologist, you need a good coach, you need a good sports medicine person. So you need this battery of experts. The moment a coach or a parents or an athlete realizes this, that you need an expert, and that is going to enhance your ability as an athlete, again a process of self-realization.
Get it, sir. It has to be a teamwork, like it was said earlier. There are some questions in the Q&A section. There's a question, psychology question. What's the strategy for dealing with players who do not open up with teammates or his coach? Can you suggest some strategies, please?
Yes, sure. So, this comes down to communication, and there will be a lot of players who are more introverted in nature, and there is no problem with that. Firstly, as coaches, you should not try to change that, but yes, there are some strategies that you can use. And one simple strategy that I would like to share, which as coaches or anybody can use with players, it's called the sandwich strategy. So basically what the sandwich strategy means is that when you're talking to a player, if you want him to open up to you, it's important that you make him feel positive about himself. So you say something positive. So you can say that, okay, you did this well, whatever it is. Then your sandwich in the middle is really the vegetables. So the top is the bread. So you say something positive, in between are the vegetables. So you say the critical feedback that you want to give, or the negative feedback that you may want to give. You may want to have him improve on something. So, you did this well, but I feel that you can do this better. And then you end it again with a bread, which is again something positive, and say that, I'm sure you'll be able to put in 100% effort. And is there something that you would like to say? So, the fact that you're saying something positive, then saying something critical, ending it with a positive statement again, it helps in two things. One is that it is perceived much better rather than saying that you've not done this well or you need to improve on this. And secondly, because there is positivity in the communication, the chances that the athlete will open up to you are also higher. So I think this sandwich approach is a very simple and an easy technique to use for coaches. So I would encourage you all to try it and see if it helps you all.
Some simple strategy that coaches can help to make the athletes open up and speak up. Thank you, Dr. Janki. If the participants have any more questions, please write them in the chat box or the Q&A section. Meanwhile, I would want all of you to briefly tell a take-home message so that, when we end up, because we will have to wrap up due to short of time, as always. I would want you to, just say a few words that people can take away. Let's begin with Sunandan sir.
मैं 3 शब्द में बोलूंगा, बोलो नहीं खेलो.
Wow. Okay. So be the doer and not the speaker. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Janki ma'am.
So I would say that, just because we can't see what happens in the mind, not to ignore it, to attend it. I would just like to add a little bit to the earlier conversation where, some of the coaches had written that at the end of the day, field pe to coach hi rehta hai, which is true. The support from the sports science that you require depends on the level of athletes that you are coaching also. And let me again give you an analogy of a school. So, when a child goes to, let's say, kindergarten, they have only one class teacher, and that class teacher or two class teachers, and those class teachers teach the children everything, and that class teacher is enough. But when the child goes to first, second standard, they have different subjects, and a class teacher cannot teach all the subjects to a child. The class teacher is still responsible for the child. So the overall assessment of the child will depend on the class teacher. So I think the role of the coach is the same, that once the child also progresses, you are the main person still. You will be the one most responsible for the child. But, like a class teacher needs other teachers to teach the children other subjects. Similarly, as coaches, you need that other support to teach those children the other areas that they need to learn about. Again, coming back to a takeaway message, before an important match, a child cannot change, or a player cannot change how physically fit he is. He cannot change how technically strong he is. The only thing he can change and control is the mindset that he goes in with during the match. And I think that is an important role as well. So I think it's important to understand that as coaches, your role also changes as the child progresses, and that's when the need of the support also changes. If your players are still at an intermediate level, you may have these support science experts on a referral system or a consultancy basis where they come in only when there is a need. With elite academies, the role then becomes full-time. A sports psychologist or a sports nutritionist or a sports physio is with the team or with the academy every single day. So it also depends on what level you are coaching your players at. So I think these are some of the things to be mindful about.
Perfect. Dr. Ajit, Dr. Tanmay.
Yeah, basically, takeaway message, I think you just need to be passionate about what you do. Make sure that, you work towards the benefit of the athlete and the players. And again, reiterating the same thing, take help of professionals. Make sure that, you inculcate good culture into the system. And grow, let the athlete grow, and you grow with the athlete as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ajit. Dr. Tanmay.
Yeah, even I would like to say, like I said earlier, that we are all here to not just create sportsmen, but create athletes. So, with performance, I feel it's like, walking on a tightrope. So, you have to keep balancing your injury prevention and rehabilitation strategies, moving well in order to go ahead, cross the tightrope, which is your performance. So, it's all about balancing your performance and helping you grow through injuries by preventing or rehabilitating them. So, like I said, let's just strive to create athletes rather than just sportsmen.
Wonderful. I think it was a very enriching kind of discussion, and I wish this never ended. But as always, as they say, time is always short for all the good things, and we need to fit everything that's good in a very short time. I guess there are no more questions from the participants. If there is one, let me just check, and if we've already answered, then I will. how a player can reduce his anxiety in the match, in a match or competition. Anxiety management is something that people would like to know about. If you can quickly tell us.
Sure. So, like I said, that there are various techniques, mental techniques that are used to help athletes handle pressure, anxiety, and other negative emotions that an athlete or teams feel during performance. Some are quite commonly used techniques, and maybe you all have heard about them. One of the most powerful technique is called visualization. Most athletes, elite athletes, do follow visualization. So visualization does help. There are other techniques based on breathing techniques that help in handling pressure. So visualization, self-talk, breathing techniques are some of the techniques that are used to manage pressure and anxiety and nervousness.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I thank all the experts on this panel for their, you know, wonderful guidance. I'm sure all the participants have thoroughly not only gained a lot of knowledge, but also enjoyed the kind of discussion. Actually, I had a lot of questions, but I did not have to ask because it all came from you. On so I once again thank you all for being here and letting us listen to you. I now say that this panel discussion session is over, but we move on to the vote of thanks session. I hand it over to Dr. Yogesh.
Thank you, ma'am. So it is just informal vote of thanks from my side, and I, Yogesh Godke, would like to take this opportunity. As we have come to the end of this international conference, it was indeed a great experience for all of us present here. Hope each one of us present here must have gained some insight out of it. This conference would have never been possible without the support and help of our staff members, teaching as well as non-teaching of Chandrasekhar Agashi College of Physical Education, and also our principal, Dr. Supan Kamesa. I'm also very thankful to the General Secretary of Maharashtra Mandal, Dhananjay Damle sir, for his support and motivation. Special thanks to White Code, our technical support team, and also thanks to the bachelor's and master's degree students of our college. A very special thanks to all our resource persons for sparing time and valuable knowledge with all of us. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of us and each one of them. Last but not least, all the participants who have made this conference a great success. Thank you one and all present here from all the members of Chandrasekhar Agashi College of Physical Education, Pune. Here I declare this program is over. Thank you once again. Thanks for joining and coming.
Thank you.